Ethan Plath thought signing his divorce papers was the end of his nightmare. He moved to the frozen tundra of Minnesota to hide, to heal, and to start a family in total silence. But that silence is about to be shattered. Tonight, we reveal the secret Ethan kept from the cameras for 5 months, the moment his brother Micah caught him in the lie, and the jaw-dropping DNA test results from Olivia that just changed everything. Is Ethan Plath starting a new life, or is he actually losing both of them? If you're as hooked on the Plath family drama as I am, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a breakdown of these unfolding stories. The frozen landscapes of Minnesota were supposed to be a sanctuary, a place where the air was crisp enough to clear the fog of a decade spent under a microscope. For Ethan, the move wasn't just about a change of scenery. It was a desperate attempt to reclaim a version of himself that hadn't been edited for television. He claimed he left the warmth of Georgia to escape the controlled truths and the suffocating secrets of his mother's world. But the irony is thick enough to freeze. While Ethan tells the world he's finally free, reports suggest he's currently vibrating with an anxiety so intense it's becoming physical. He spent the last few months building a life with Tegan Nichols, a life that exists entirely in the shadows. To gain the peace he craves, he has inadvertently created a war zone of silence. By trying to protect his new relationship from the very people he says he trusts, he's found himself caught in the most complex web of his life. There's a certain paradox in Ethan's search for a fresh start. He tells Tegan he wants a life free from the Plathville drama, yet by insisting they keep her 5-month pregnancy a secret, he has recreated the exact environment of suppression he grew up in. It's been said that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And in Ethan's case, he is becoming the very person he spent years trying to run away from. He's using the same tactics of concealment and curated reality that he once blamed his parents for. This isn't just a secret, it's a lifestyle of avoidance. He is navigating a strange reality where the more he tries to keep things simple, the more convoluted they become. The pressure of maintaining this grounded life is starting to show, and the cracks are forming in the most public way possible. The dilemma Ethan faces is a brutal double bind. If he finally opens up to his family about Tegan and the baby on the way, he is effectively inviting the cameras and his mother's inevitable judgment back into his inner circle. But if he continues to keep the world out, he risks losing the woman who has stood by him. Reports claim Tegan is growing weary of being treated like a dirty little secret, a hidden chapter in a book Ethan is too afraid to read out loud. He's caught between the fear of losing his privacy and the very real threat of losing his partner. It's a high-stakes game of emotional chicken, and Ethan is the one driving straight toward a cliff. He wanted a woman who was uncomplicated, someone different from the demanding energy of his past. But his own actions are making the situation 10 times more volatile than anything he experienced before. This isn't just about family dynamics. There's a professional and financial shadow looming over this entire situation. The Plathville contract is a powerful thing, and in the world of reality TV, secrets aren't just personal, they're potential legal liabilities. Hiding a pregnancy isn't just a choice Ethan is making for his sanity. It's a move that could have ruinous consequences for his paycheck. If the production team finds out he's been filming a curated, fake version of his life while a real, world-changing event grows in the shadows, the fallout could be massive. He's effectively living a double life. The lonely, rebuilding bachelor for the cameras, and the expectant father behind closed doors. The tension between these two identities is a ticking time bomb that's about to explode, and the collateral damage might be more than his bank account can handle. The moment of impact allegedly came when Micah Plath made an unannounced trip to the quiet Minnesota house. It's been whispered by those close to the production that the scene was anything but a happy reunion. As Micah walked into that kitchen, Ethan wasn't just cold from the winter air, he was physically shaking. He was reportedly seen fumbling with his phone, trying to hide messages and photos, a physical manifestation of a lie that had grown too heavy to carry. The secret didn't just slip out in a moment of weakness. It exploded under the weight of Micah's intuition. Micah, who has seen Ethan at his highest and lowest, knew immediately that the silence in that house was far too loud. The facade didn't just crack, it shattered, leaving Ethan standing in the ruins of his own making. Ethan's fatal flaw has always been his belief that if he doesn't speak a problem out loud, it simply doesn't exist. He treats major life events like a car repair he can put off until next season, failing to realize that a human life and a long-term relationship cannot be parked in a garage and forgotten. This cycle of avoidance is a character study in how trauma can follow you across state lines. He tries to frame his silence as a form of protection, telling Tegan he's keeping her safe from the toxicity of his family, but insiders suggest Tegan sees it as a form of shame. To her, it feels like she's a part of his life he isn't proud of, rather than a partner he's proud to build a future with. He tries to play the hero, but in reality, he's just a man who is terrified of a single phone call from his mother. Even his closest allies are starting to see through the smoke. When Olivia Plath reached out, her intuition reportedly cut through Ethan's excuses like a knife. It's been said that when she told him, "I know you're lying," Ethan finally realized he had no allies left in his game of shadows. He is a man in a house in the middle of a frozen wasteland, and the walls are closing in. Every lie he told to secure his peace has only served to isolate him further. He wanted to be free, but he has built a prison out of his own secrets. And just as he began to grapple with the reality of his life with Tegan, the past decided to strike back with a force no one saw coming. The ultimate cosmic joke was waiting just around the corner in the form of an update from his ex-wife. Just as Ethan was preparing to face the truth about his new family, rumors began to swirl about a DNA test from Olivia. The reports suggest that Olivia has come forward with news of a pregnancy of her own, one that dates back to the final months of their marriage, or perhaps shortly after. The results of a DNA test are rumored to confirm that Ethan's past is not just behind him, it's walking right toward him. He tried to hide one life, and now he potentially has two, both demanding his attention and both under the watchful eye of a global audience. The fresh start he moved to Minnesota for is officially dead, replaced by a reality far more complicated than anything he ever imagined. But the truth about how Micah discovered the nursery is where this story takes an even darker turn. The reality of Ethan's situation in Minnesota is far grimmer than a simple case of cold feet or a desire for privacy. When you look at the business side of being a Plath, the stakes transform from personal drama into a potential financial nightmare. It's been widely reported that the contracts for reality shows like theirs often include clauses about life-changing events and the requirement to disclose major developments to production. By keeping Tegan's pregnancy a secret for 5 months, Ethan wasn't just lying to his family, he was potentially breaching a multi-million-dollar agreement. The cameras are his primary source of income, the very thing that funded his move to the Midwest and his collection of vintage cars. But the secret he's guarding has become his ultimate liability. If the network feels he's been filming a curated, dishonest version of his life while a massive storyline was unfolding off camera, the legal and financial fallout could be catastrophic. He's essentially trapped in a double bind where telling the truth might save his relationship but could simultaneously bankrupt his future. This isn't just a family secret anymore, it's a professional gamble that's starting to look like a losing hand. The physical manifestation of this stress supposedly reached a breaking point during a quiet evening when Micah Plath arrived at Ethan's doorstep. For Micah, who has spent the last year exploring the high-energy life of Los Angeles, the silence of Ethan's Minnesota home was immediately suspicious. Reports suggest that Micah didn't just stumble onto the truth. He felt the weight of it the moment he walked through the door. The house, which Ethan described as a peaceful retreat, allegedly felt more like a bunker. Insiders claim that Micah noticed small, undeniable clues. A stray baby book tucked under a couch cushion, a flicker of panic in Ethan's eyes whenever his phone buzzed, and the total absence of Tegan whenever a camera or a family member was near. The tension in that kitchen wasn't just about the cold weather outside. It was about the cold reality that Ethan was living a lie. When Micah finally confronted him, Ethan's response wasn't a denial, it was a collapse. He had spent so long holding the walls up that he didn't have the strength left to pretend when someone who truly knew him started asking questions. This confrontation highlights Ethan's most significant behavioral flaw, the avoidance cycle. He seems to believe that as long as a problem isn't spoken aloud, it doesn't truly exist in the physical world. He's been treating Tegan's pregnancy like a mechanical issue on one of his old cars, something he can park in the garage, throw a tarp over, and deal with whenever he feels ready. But a relationship and a growing human life can't be put on hold. By attempting to protect Tegan from the Plathville chaos, he actually subjected her to something far worse, a life in hiding. Reports from those close to the couple suggest that Tegan felt less like a partner and more like a liability Ethan was trying to manage. He tried to frame his secrecy as an act of heroism, a way to shield his new family from the toxicity of his past, but to Tegan, it felt like shame. He was so terrified of a judgment call from his mother or a snide remark from his father that he was willing to sacrifice Tegan's comfort and her right to celebrate her first pregnancy. The isolation Ethan built for himself in Minnesota eventually became a prison of his own design. Even his most loyal supporters within the family, like Lydia, began to sense the distance. Lydia has always been the bridge between the different factions of the Plath family, the one who tries to keep the peace through prayer and persistence. But even her patience has its limits. Rumors suggest that during a series of phone calls, Lydia straight up told Ethan that his silence was hurting the family more than the truth ever could. She could hear the strain in his voice, the way he would abruptly end conversations whenever the topic of his future plans came up. When even your closest allies tell you they know you're lying, the game is usually over. But for Ethan, the realization that he was totally alone in his deception didn't lead to an immediate confession. It led to a deeper retreat into his own head. He was a man standing in the middle of a frozen wasteland, realizing that the bridge back to his family was burning, and he was the one holding the match. The irony of Ethan's simple life is that he has made it more convoluted than anything he ever experienced during his marriage to Olivia. He spent years complaining that Olivia was too demanding and too complicated, yet here he is navigating a secret pregnancy, a hidden relationship, and a brewing legal battle with a TV network. He wanted a grounded woman like Tegan, so things would be easy, but his own inability to be honest has made their life impossible. He's recreated the very atmosphere of secrets and controlled truths that he claimed he moved to Minnesota to escape. The very traits he despised in his parents, the manipulation of information and the hiding of reality, have become his own primary survival tools. It's a classic case of becoming what you fear, and the people around him are starting to realize that Ethan might be the common denominator in all the drama he claims to hate. Just as the walls were closing in regarding Tegan, the ultimate bombshell dropped from a direction Ethan never expected. The past, in the form of his ex-wife Olivia, decided to make its presence felt in a way that would change the trajectory of his life forever. While Ethan was busy trying to hide his new family, reports began to surface that Olivia had some news of her own, news that would make his secret pregnancy look like a minor detail. Speculation has been rampant online that Olivia underwent a DNA test to prove the paternity of a child that Ethan didn't even know existed. This wasn't just a rumor about a post-divorce fling. This was an allegation that the timeline of their final months together was far more complicated than anyone realized. The DNA results, according to these insider reports, suggest that Ethan's past is about to become a very permanent part of his present. The shock of this revelation reportedly sent Ethan into a tailspin. He had spent months convinced that he was finally moving forward, that he had successfully closed the book on his life in Georgia and his marriage to Olivia. But the DNA test results served as a brutal reminder that you can't just sign a piece of paper and expect the past to disappear. He tried to hide one life in Minnesota, and now he's potentially facing the reality of two different children by two different women at the exact same time. The simple life he dreamed of has officially evaporated, replaced by a situation so complex it would baffle a team of lawyers. He is now caught between the woman he's trying to build a future with and the woman who defined his past, and both of them are holding him accountable in ways he isn't prepared to handle. As the news of the DNA test began to circulate within the Plath family inner circle, the reaction was one of total disbelief. Kim and Barry, who have had their own fair share of scandals and public fallout, were reportedly stunned by the sheer scale of the mess Ethan had found himself in. The man who wanted to hide from the world was now at the center of a storm that would likely become the focal point of the next season of their show. But while the family was reeling from the Olivia bombshell, Micah was still standing in that Minnesota kitchen, waiting for Ethan to explain the nursery he had just discovered. The collision of Ethan's two worlds was no longer a theoretical fear. It was happening in real time, and the fallout was going to be televised. But the most shocking part of the Micah confrontation wasn't what he found. It was what Ethan said next. The silence in that Minnesota kitchen was finally broken when Micah asked the one question Ethan had spent 5 months trying to avoid. Reports suggest that Micah had accidentally discovered a room at the end of the hallway that was supposed to stay locked. A room filled with a crib, soft lighting, and the undeniable proof that Ethan was preparing for a life he hadn't told anyone about. When Ethan finally spoke, it wasn't a confession of joy. It was a desperate plea for more time. He reportedly told Micah that he wasn't ready for the world to know because the world always finds a way to ruin things. But Micah's reaction was a reality check that Ethan wasn't prepared for. He pointed out that by hiding Tegan and the baby, Ethan wasn't protecting them from the drama. He was making them the center of it. The secret didn't just slip, it exploded, leaving Ethan to realize that his brothers and sisters weren't his enemies. His own fear was. But as the dust settled on the nursery discovery, the news from Olivia Plath hit like a physical blow. Rumors suggest that the DNA test results Olivia provided weren't just a claim, they were backed by documentation that has supposedly left the Plath family in a state of total shock. If these reports are accurate, it means that while Ethan was trying to build a new, simple life with Tegan, a massive piece of his past was already reaching out to claim its place in his future. The timing couldn't be worse. Tegan, who had already been feeling like a dirty little secret, was now faced with the possibility that her partner wasn't just hiding her, he was potentially tied to his ex-wife in the most permanent way possible. Insiders claim that Tegan gave Ethan an ultimatum. Either he stops running and stands up to his family and his past, or she's taking the baby and leaving him to face the cameras alone. This is the ultimate point of no return for Ethan. His fatal flaw has always been the belief that he could park his problems in a garage and fix them later. But human emotions and growing families don't work like vintage engines. He tried to frame his move to Minnesota as a heroic escape, but it's looking more like a strategic retreat that failed. He blamed Olivia for being complicated and demanding, yet he has managed to create a situation 10 times more convoluted than their marriage ever was. He wanted Tegan because she was grounded, but he is the one making her life unstable. It's been said that the very things we run away from are the things we carry with us. And Ethan Plath is living proof that you can change your zip code, but you can't change your character without doing the hard work of being honest. The financial and legal fallout is just beginning to surface. If the network decides to pursue a breach of contract, Ethan could be looking at a future where he's not just juggling two families, but also massive legal fees. The cameras that he once saw as a nuisance are now the only thing keeping him afloat, yet they are the very things he's been lying to. He is a man caught between losing his privacy, losing his partner, and losing his livelihood. The isolation he sought in the frozen north has become a reality check he can't ignore. Lydia's phone calls, Micah's confrontation, and Olivia's DNA bombshell have all converged into a single, undeniable truth. The fresh start was a lie he told himself to avoid growing up. As we look at the wreckage of Ethan's Minnesota dream, it's clear that the past never stays buried, especially in Plathville. He tried to hide one life, and now he has two, and the entire world is watching to see if he'll finally stop shaking and start leading. This is a story that proves the past never stays buried, especially in Plathville. What do you think? Is Ethan a victim of his upbringing, or is he the architect of his own chaos? And how will Tegan handle the news that Olivia is back in the picture in the most permanent way possible? Drop your theories in the comments below. I read every single one. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because the next update in the Plath family saga is coming sooner than you think. Stay tuned.